Alright, I'm about to answer the most important question. Why am I Catholic? First, I'm gonna start from bottom to up. I'm gonna go to why I'm a theist, why I believe in a God of some sort. And you know what, for time's sake, I'll just use my favorite argument for God. It's the argument of motion. You may have heard of it, you may have not. It's popularized by St Thomas Aquinas. I get most of my why I believe in God arguments from him because, in my opinion, he's the most reliable when talking about arguments to bring up to non-believers, especially non-theists, when talking about God. So this is the argument of motion that I'm about to present. It's my favorite argument, and to be honest, you can't deny a lot of it because a lot of it is just common sense that we know are laws of the universe. It's basically this: any object that moves is propelled by an external force. And it's like a chain with superior forces influencing and moving inferior ones. And this is what we call the chain of causality. However, we know that this chain of causality cannot go on forever with just pure human intellect. Any object moved by an external force is merely a tool. Without any originating source of motion, everything remains a passive instrument. An endless sequence of movers implies no beginning, which we obviously know is false because obvious science says otherwise, that time, space, matter, all of these things had a beginning. I mean, do you understand how absurd it sounds that tools can operate independently without a first mover? I mean, that sounds stupid. If you were just to go off of a domino chain, if nothing knocks the first domino down, whether it be a human or wind, something knocked it down. It can't knock itself over. That's purely contradictory, and it doesn't make any sense for how the universe would start. St. Thomas Aquinas puts it as a saw cannot cut wood without the carpenter's hand. That's a really good analogy that explains nothing can be done without a first mover. It is common sense for why God must exist. So there's the argument of motion, pretty much. Very short theological summary. But if God does exist, how do we know it's the God described in the Bible? Well, alright, bet. If God exists, it follows that the one who animates must remain still. If the primary source were in motion, that would imply an external force was moving it, which is impossible if we're talking about the first mover. And a self-propulsion creates a paradox. It would mean the entity's a pusher and the pushed, which makes absolutely no sense. Since receiving motion requires potential, and causing motion implies action, a being cannot be in the same state regarding the same action at once. And if a section of God moved an entire another section, that would imply that God is not fully God, it's just because of a specific component. So therefore, God can't change. That's one, God can't change. We can also say that the divine is timeless. Anything that starts or finishes undergoes change or transition. And since we've established that God can't change, he's thus eternal. Eternal, can't change. He's also everlasting, omnipresent. It's a contradiction for something that cannot cease to be to not be. It's also clear that this divine nature is outside of time, since he is fully present all at once. Time is only relevant to subjects that can change, and we've already established that God can't change, so he is not a subject to time. Therefore, he is outside of time. It also follows that God is identical to his essence. A thing's essence is the definition of it. Unless external qualities or attributes are added onto it, a being is pretty much the same as its essence. And God has no external qualities or additions, so he is the same as his essence. And since God is existence itself is proven, which doesn't inhabit material subject and is the same as his essence with no added features or attributes or traits, he cannot be pluralized, meaning there is one God, outside of time, omnipresent, one, eternal. This is starting to look like the God from the Bible. It also follows that he must be boundless, which therefore he must also be all-powerful. If the divine essence is unlimited, his power must also be without limit. And then we can establish the intellect of God as we see everything in the universe crafted with such precision and such care and love that we can say that this God is an intellectual God, because for him to basically string the universe together and conduct it takes intellect in itself. So he is obviously all knowledgeable because he has made and crafted and knows all the knowledge in the universe. All knowledge, all powerful, no limits, all good because there is good in creation. Kind of sounds like the God from the Bible, doesn't it? So I've covered how it's my God, but how do I use actual evidence and put it into play to prove to you that Christianity is true? And then I have to prove Catholicism with the Bible, with the tools after I prove Christianity true. To prove Christianity, I have to do one thing. I have to prove the resurrection of Jesus Christ. If it didn't happen, he's a liar and he's not God. If it did happen, all of his claims have so much more merit and authority behind them, and everything that he said would happen would have happened, and then the Bible would be credible and says he's God. He said he was God. He said he would rise. If he did rise, he's most likely God. So all I have to do is prove the resurrection, and I can do that with literally just empirical evidence. I can do it with 6 reasons. 6 or 7 reasons I could literally prove the resurrection. Here we go. First off, we're certain that Jesus was a real person. We see this over 25,000 Greek manuscripts. That's more than Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great. He is historically considered a real person by every single scholar. It's also historically certain that Jesus performed miracles, whether these be attributed to him being divine or him being a trickster, as some might say. But historically, there are so many eyewitnesses to these miracles that you cannot deny that these miracles did happen to an extent. Whether you believe it's because of his divinity or not, I'm going to show you why I believe it was his divinity by proving the resurrection next. So we know he was alive and he did miracles. Now the resurrection. Reason 1, Jesus died by crucifixion. This is historically reliable. Reason 2, the disciples had experiences that they believed to be the risen Jesus. Reason 3, they were willing to die for that belief and faith, and many of them, if not all of them, were martyred for their faith. Reason 4, the resurrection was proclaimed immediately after the cross, which is insanely hard to fake. Today, the consensus position is that you can trace the preaching of the resurrection all the way back to immediately after the cross. In fact, when Paul said yes on his way to Damascus to Jesus, there was already a body of data called the early creeds. These are written about in the New Testament and were already being preached abroad before Paul. When Paul said yes, there were heavy creeds, and about at least 80% of them preached the resurrection. So they were already in existence before Paul. Paul did not create Christianity. When he came to Christ, the person he hated most, we already had data from that 2-year period before when he was persecuting Christians still. Reason 5 and 6, James, the very close relative to Jesus, and Paul both believed in Jesus after they claimed to have encounters with the risen, resurrected Christ. Both non-believers, by the way. These are all historical facts which you can verify with any philosopher modern day or scholar modern day that are historically reliable, considered facts. There is no naturalistic approach that can explain these facts. The only answer is that Jesus rose from the dead and is God. This is empirical evidence. So now for the main question, why am I specifically Catholic? Well, it relies on truly one thing, the one thing that makes us distinct from every single other denomination, and that is the papacy. And all I have to do is truly give you one verse, because this verse says it all. Matthew 16:17 through 20, I guess. This is when Jesus gives Simon Bar-Jonah, Simon, who is Peter, the name Peter. I will call you Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. The difference between Peter and rock, Petros and Petra. The only difference is that one is a man and one is a female. The church has always been considered the bride of Christ. In Psalms, we see it called the daughter of Zion for the people of Jerusalem and the temple of Jerusalem. And now, speaking of ecclesial life, it is considered the bride of Christ. So obviously it will be called a female. And Peter's not a female, he's a man. So the only difference is that they're sticking to gender-like pronouns. Like, that's the only difference here. And we can get even more into it when we look at the Hebrew. Because in the Hebrew, it's literally the same word. You are Kepha, and on this Kepha, I will build my church. Literally saying, I will build my church on Peter, and he will have universal jurisdiction over other churches. Not to say he has like on specific churches, but he has universal jurisdiction on local churches. Thank you. Bye.